the vault, high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Talking Catholic. It is Mike Walsh, your host du jour. As you can tell, the unusual happenstance of me opening the podcast means none of my regular co-hosts are here. We are recording this for the 4th of July weekend, and I'm happy to say they are all out and about and enjoying their 4th of July, and I would never ask anyone to do any work on their vacation, which is in fact a lie. I would totally do that, but in this case, I felt that we could give them some well-needed rest. They've all been working very hard, and they need some time away. However, someone who is so lackadaisical, I didn't have a problem with asking her onto the podcast is Donna Ottaviano-Britt. Donna, I lie. You are one of the hardest working people in the Diocese of Camden, but thank you for joining me as my guest co-host today.
Nice try. I figured I was going straight under the bus, on that one. I didn't deserve any time off on the 4th of July weekend, Mike.
Well, the last time you were on, I was so over the top nice, it felt uncomfortable. And I felt that if we started with a tiny little shiv, it'll break the ice for today's podcast. So thank you.
That'd be great. Everyone should love listening to this conversation, and they should be used to us by now, really. You were quite good last time, so this is more, lined up to what your personality is really like.
Well, you had to be on this episode because we're doing an episode specifically about pastoral life. And as some people may know, you are the Secretary for Pastoral Life in the Diocese of Camden, in addition to your full-time job as the Director of the Discipleship and Leadership Office, which are quite a lot of words altogether. But we're having very much a pastoral life conversation today because in the state of New Jersey, not just in our diocese, in the state of New Jersey, up and down, even, second class North Jersey, we are having a special conference specifically dedicated to family. And because of that, we actually have a special guest today, and it's one of our friends from the Metuchen Diocese. We love to, whenever we can, to include folks from the other dioceses. And because we have the Diocese of Camden has a special place in its heart for the Diocese of Metuchen, as they have one of our priests of Camden as their bishop, Bishop James Checchio. We like to do as much crossover work as we can. So with us today is Cristina D'Averso-Collins, which I kind of butchered there. I don't know how that happened, but Cristina, thank you very much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. Love the introduction.
Sure. So could you describe your role in the Diocese of Metuchen?
Sure. So I work as the director for the Office of Family Life. And as you mentioned, we are planning this conference currently in conjunction with our Office of Evangelization. I should say we had planned this conference. It is now currently going on. It has been, we were in the process for so long. I'm so used to saying we're planning this conference. So anyway, it is ongoing. Yes, and of course, family life covers a wide swath of the pastoral life within the church. So we'd be here for a while if we talked all about that. But
well, let's let the cat out of the bag right now. So this conference, a statewide conference, is a great opportunity. It's what is the name of the conference?
It's called The Joy of Love and Family. And the title is based on Pope Francis' encyclical Amoris Laetitia, which is the joy of love. So,
and this conference is a virtual conference, correct?
That is correct. Yes, it is 100% virtual, and all of the talks are pre-recorded. So basically, that means that once they air, which they do once a month, we're aiming for the first of the month. We will be doing the first of the month, except for June, which was a little different. So in any event, once they air, they'll be on YouTube and they'll be posted onto our website for a year after.
Okay. And just to give the plugs now, where can people go to see the conference right now or to access the conference?
So you're going to want to go to the Lighting Hearts on Fire website from the Diocese of Metuchen. It's lightingheartsonfire.org. And that is our evangelization site for the diocese. So you'll be able to click on the Joy Love Family Conference Series, and you'll be able to click on different areas. So whether you want June, we have a theme for June, and then July is now up as of today. So.
Well, and for our dear listeners, if you were listening back in early January, you know that we had my colleagues from the Diocese of Metuchen who have the similarly named podcast, Lighting Hearts on Fire, Tara Smith and Jerry Wiskowski. And we love having them on. That was actually a great conversation as well. I encourage you to go back and listen to it. If for no other reason, then their podcast is better than ours. So you should definitely listen to it whenever you can. I was actually listening to it today going, why do I not sound that professional? I'm older than both of them. I should be as professional as they, and so spiritual and enlightened. It's a wonderful podcast. So just to give a little love to our fellow podcasters, I hope you'll check out their podcast. So Cristina, with this conference, what kind of generated the desire to put on this virtual conference?
So it's a very interesting question. So we were discussing amongst our staff about the year of St. Joseph, and of course, that the year of the family. And the commemoration of Amoris Laetitia, all these things kind of, coming together. And we had talked, amongst myself and my coworkers, and this idea actually kind of came about, like, well, why don't we do a conference? And so initially we had a few ideas about that, and then it became a conference series, basically meaning that we'll, keep the momentum going for 6 months, and every month will have its own particular theme. So I'm sure many of your listeners are well aware that these virtual conferences are kind of springing up everywhere now. They were before the pandemic, and now they are, just everywhere. So if you go on a virtual Catholic conference, there's a conference on just about anything. And it's wonderful because it's all pre-recorded talks. You can watch them at your leisure. So that's somewhat of a model in a certain way for what we're doing here. The ability to tune in when it's convenient for you and to not have to be in a certain place at a certain time, which I think it meets a lot of needs.
And I'll tell you, for people who might be saying to themselves, wait a second, the pandemic is essentially over. Why are we still doing virtual conferences? As someone who used to run major conferences all across the globe, I can tell you that it takes years to put together a in-person conference. So don't hold it against us that we're still doing a virtual conference, because it took a lot of planning just to get to this stage. And now I will tell you already, Donna Ottaviano-Britt, my beloved colleague, has already put in plans for in-person events in the very near future, perhaps even as soon as the end of this year or early next year. Right, Donna?
Right, Mike. It's nothing like putting me on the hook for in-person conference this year, which they're just kernels of ideas at the to figure out what it we can possibly do and what people would be open, to participate in and the content that's there. But I think people are ready to gather again too. So here's what I would talk about, which actually has come up with a number of parishes that really were very active during COVID, is that based on the needs of our people, we're going to have to always do hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
And it's things related to, we learned through pandemic, but it isn't necessarily associated with pandemic, is that people don't want to be out. It's like, I don't have the time. I don't have the time in front of or behind, or this time doesn't fit for me. It's like, we have to be able to meet the needs of our people. And so part of it's going to be in person and part of it's going to be virtual, whether it's live virtual, kind of the way the three of us are talking right now, which is on a Zoom call, and so we have to be prepared to meet the needs and not just think everybody's going to do everything in person, just because life doesn't allow for that for everyone, particularly busy parents and busy families.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You mentioned, especially young families, busy parents. It's very hard to be able to block out. I have my husband, I have a 2-year-old, very hard to block out a certain amount of time to actually attend something that spans a number of hours. I could never do that. So you have to keep these needs in mind. And it's funny you say that about, hybrid, because our marriage preparation, our God's Plan sessions are still virtual. And we're going to keep them virtual right now. We've planned them out right now through October. And what we're going to do is we're going to have masses for engaged couples. So there will be an opportunity for the engaged couples to come and to congregate and have some FaceTime with one another. But what we have found is that this live, online Zoom really gives us the possibility of reaching people that, they're not living in the same state even, like couples living apart in different areas. They'll be getting married within our diocese, but it's wonderful. And we can also really pull from a wider variety of speakers to talk to our couples because of this. And you mentioned that with the conference, it takes over a year to plan something like this, but also it can be very hard to obtain some of the speakers. So we have speakers, as you'll see on our list, like, Jason Everett, Matt Fradd, Sarah Swafford. These are big names in the Catholic world, so to speak, right? Catholic famous. So they book up very quickly. It would be hard to get them, not impossible, but this format is just so much easier to get people to acquiesce to our requests. So
that's absolutely true. And I have to give you a lot of credit. So I went on and, I was watching because the first set of videos, I think, came out on June 24th.
That's right. Good memory.
Hey, listen, I do my research barely, but I do my research.
Nice.
So one of the things that really impressed me when I saw these videos was just how great the quality of the videos were. I mean, we've all gotten used to in this Zoom related world during a pandemic of not having great quality of videos. They were all like Zoom or team videos. The first three that I saw were fantastic. There were these high res, great audio, wonderfully shot. There's candles flickering in the background of one of them.
Yeah.
I was like, wow,
Devin
somebody
shot.
really went. Yes. That they really did a great job. And they're very enthusiastic and very impressive. One of the ones I watched was one of our guests who came on actually right before the pandemic hit. I think he was our last pre-pandemic podcast was with Paul J. Kim.
Yes.
And he has this wonderful message of, his own, his own story of what brought him to the faith. And then, how he's continued along this path as a family man, which can often be very difficult, as you're a young person. I go back and listen to our podcast. That's great, but definitely want to check out his video too, because it's really good. Was that kind of quality something you were looking for as you were putting these together?
Yes, it was. And we were very careful when we selected the speakers. I mean, these are just high quality presenters in general, and they're set up for this. It's very clear, right? It is very professionally done. I am thinking immediately of Devin shot with the candles, as you were mentioning. And don't get too used to it though, because when I shoot mine for September, it's not going to be as high quality. I was thinking about this. I'm like, where can I shoot the video to make it look just like so wonderful and high res,
Well, you remember you have you on the other hand have access to an excellent communications department. And if I might add, you also have access to the Diocese of Camden's superior video work. We do incredible work. So all you need to do is make a phone call. And we are there to shoot your video. We will. I'm making you this promise right now. If you want a video, we will come up and shoot it for you. Not a problem.
Can you shoot like on the beach? I mean, I would really by the beach.
Yes. The answer to all of your questions is yes. We are just that good.
Well, I would think the video team would love to go to the beach, Cristina.
There you go.
Yeah, that's not a hard sell for us.
No.
That's great. Well, that's where I live, and that's where we are almost every day. I take my daughter down for walks in the morning. So.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's nice.
So let's talk a little bit about your speaker. You mentioned a couple of names, but let's talk a little bit about the sort of the concept. So, does each month have its own theme?
Month does. Yes. So when we pulled together the conference as a whole, we tried to target different areas, different developmental areas, we'll say. And this kind of came out of Josue Areola from the Diocese of Trenton. He said that they are they're very clear with materials that they put out about these different areas, about targeting these different audiences. So he shared with us the categories that they use in Trenton. So young adults, families with young children, older adults. So we tried to target all of these different areas to have some talks that would appeal to various people. And then when I put together the schedule for each month, I tried to make them as cohesive as possible. So the theme for this month is family relationships. And what we have here is we have things about chastity, we have dating, we have the single life. And then we also have a talk from the founder of the Catholic Grandparents Association, because as you know, Pope Francis named July 25th the World Day for Grandparents and the Elderly. So we were trying to think of it actually not too long ago. That could be the name? What's the thematic name for this month? And so we just settled on family relationships. Because if we said, dating, that doesn't quite cover the other end. But anyway, so yes. And then there were different things we took into account. So July 6th is the Feast of St. Maria Goretti. She's frequently invoked for, purity and chastity. And so it seemed logical to put these talks in July. And we have August. People are thinking about back to school. So we have talks that are really geared towards families with children, with, raising their children in the faith, growing their family culture. September, we're gearing it towards women. We have the birthday of Mary, September 8th. So that's our theme for the month. And then October, we're tackling family healing. And we on the heels of the National Day for suicide prevention or suicide awareness. And then we have November, which is National Caregivers Month. So we have some talks about that. Actually, my coworker, my boss, Jen, she'll be doing the talk about caring for people at the end stages of life. So there was a method to the madness in coming up with the different months for different talks.
And which video will yours be?
Mine will be on authentic femininity in September.
Oh, very nice.
I look forward to that. You've done a really beautiful job, Cristina, of sort of weaving a lot of the elements of family over these months. So we're going to do our bit out in order to promote the conference and really kind of put it out across the Diocese of Camden, because there are so many potential needs that get met in this space like this. So do you have any early feedback? Like, I know your videos just came out like a week or so ago, but I think, what's the early response? Is there a particular way that you're promoting this across your diocese, like to specific mailing lists? And I know you're doing a lot of public promotion. And then the second question I have for you is, how long did it actually take to get here?
Oh, goodness. Okay. So in terms of the promotion and the feedback right now, so as you mentioned, yes, it's being promoted. Our communications team is promoting across social media. I know I always put things on my own personal social media as well. I find that that's actually very helpful. In a lot of the groups that I run, I have obtained members by doing that on my own social media. So it's actually quite helpful. But the early feedback that I've gotten was from members of a virtual women's group that I facilitate. And the women were saying that they really loved the format, the fact that it was pre-recorded, that they could watch anytime, and that it was online. So that's the feedback I've received so far. Again, like you said, it was June 24th. So we'll see what the feedback is like after today, since the other talks have gone out for July.
Well, with that in mind, I have to say it's a very digestible program. So I think each of the talks I saw for the first month were roughly 35 to 40 minutes, roughly. So, I mean, I think that's something that a person can, particularly for a presentation like that's, where, it's really kind of a one-on-one conversation between the speaker and the listener. I think that's a good solid number. So you really get the essence of what they're talking about. And you can really be drawn into it. So I found it to be very good. Yeah.
I'm so glad. That was one of the things that we said to the speakers, if you could keep it, within a short amount of time. So that's great.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad that your speakers were listening, because I will say that that's sometimes something you don't really get. sometimes you get an hour and a half, and I'm like, well, I could cut this down to 20 minutes, and it'd be great.
Yeah.
That's always. I have to admit, that is the advice I always give all of our speakers: is let's keep it tight. I think because I think virtual has been a great opportunity, but I have found that it's like television programs and social media and everything else. Our attention spans have gotten a little shorter. So it's good to be able to have something like that. That being said, last night I watched an hour and a half YouTube show. So who knows? It's if you're invested in it, you'll watch it no matter how long it is.
Yes, exactly.
I'm curious.
I'm glad you told me that, because I was thinking 2 hours for mine. So
we'll still come up and shoot it for you. We'll just edit it for you.
Right.
In terms of like how were you able to, you mentioned that one of the benefits of this conference is the fact that because it's virtual, you were able to sort of pick from the Catholic universe and find good speakers. How did you kind of go out and decide on these? Because it's a lot of speakers. I mean, I was about to do the math and then realized I fell off the page, but you have something like 20 speakers, right?
Yes, we do.
More.
So my coworker, Alan, and I kind of discussed, this was several months ago, and he had his, list of who he thought, and then we kind of, convened and we, put a few more in, and we, took some out. So that's kind of how it happened. And a few things too that, like for instance, the October, we have the Ministry for Adult Children of Divorce, which it's a fabulous new ministry, the Life Giving Wounds ministry. And the reason I know of them is because I know members, and also it kind of came out of a conference from the JP2 Institute, which is where I went to grad school. So I was familiar with this, and it's a very unique thing. It's kind of sweeping the country and diocesan world, and they're booked up with their retreats all over the country. So it seemed like something to really feature. It's an untapped need. So this was really the opportunity to be able to bring in some very unique elements to the conversation that I think people might not be hearing in other places. So, and then of course you have, as you mentioned, other names that I'm sure you're very familiar with. So we've tried to mix it up a bit and to really provide high quality content.
Yeah, the one thing
to our listeners.
So can I just chat right over you, Mike? You care? I'm going to chat right over you. So I really love that the way you found this other content, right? So what you're talking about is this Living Wounds ministry, because I really think what you've done in your collaborations and who you have brought in to speak is it gives other people ideas of what needs that maybe are not being met in their diocese or in their parishes or in their communities. So really kind of opening the aperture on, we really need to think about this. And not every parish can do every ministry, but I just think, the adult children of divorce, I think it's such a need for them to have someone to minister to them. So I think it's really wonderful that you're able to provide this sort of broader scope for people that are committed to families, that are in families, that are ministering to families, to really give them some line of sight into what's available to them to actually be healed and to be part of a group that's, dedicated to that. So kudos to you for actually putting it together the way that you did.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, I don't want to take sole credit because Alan Caballero and I did it. He was responsible for all of the Hispanic speakers. Mm-hmm. So he did a great work with that as well. So, but yeah, it's go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just I should apologize for that because I'm giving short shrift to the fact that this is very much a bilingual conference with both talks in English and in Spanish, and not simply translations of what is in the English sphere, but dedicated presentations specifically to Spanish speakers, of which our own beloved Andres Arango, the head of our Office of Hispanic Ministry and Evangelization, is presented in June, I believe. He was in one of the June presentations. Yeah,
he did. Yes,
he's a fantastic speaker. So I hope the Spanish-speaking audience will certainly appreciate him. I know I do. I don't speak Spanish, and yet I love listening to him talk. I really do. It's the strangest thing.
I will have to check it out. It'd be good practice. I actually majored in Spanish, and I'm very rusty at this point. So maybe that's my practice. I'll view these talks.
Well, he's Colombian, and his dialect is excellent. So I encourage that. That's something that really deserves a lot of praise as well. And oftentimes, when certainly this has been a situation that we've faced in our own diocese, is making sure that you're doing a good job of offering presentations to the Spanish speaking population that is more than just a regurgitation of what's English, simply because the audiences actually are quite different. This is something that we recognized pretty early on, actually, thanks to Andres in a lot of ways, making sure that I, as a communicator, understood that offering cogent perspectives on the faith has to be more than just simply translating the bishop's weekly column. That it has to be offering perspective and people who've actually lived the life. So kudos to you guys going to that extra step to making sure that you're talking to both audiences with an authentic voice.
Thank you for that. And I do know that Alan had selected some speakers for the Spanish track that are very well known in the Spanish speaking world as well. So I think that that's excellent. That there are others who, and then there are locals, like you mentioned, right? And I know Alan and his wife did a talk, and obviously Andres. So yeah, it's so thank you for that. We certainly hope it's a blessing, for all communities.
And by the way, just putting this out there, should any of your speakers get, not be able to do it, get hit by a bus, something like that, Donna is an outstanding speaker. She gives presentations like this all the time. If any of your speakers drop out late, I highly encourage you to invite Donna on, because she's outstanding. Right, Donna? You're outstanding, right?
So, Cristina, what I will tell you is that there are some days I would think Mike Walsh is actually my boss, assigning me project after project after project. So now he's going to put me out here because I'm an outstanding speaker. I believe just yesterday, Mike, was it yesterday? When was I with the Chancery? You didn't think I was going to be on time. Oh, no, 2 days ago. On time for a meeting with you and Jen because of my previous meeting. And, Donna likes to talk a lot, so I don't really know if she's going to be on time or late. Right?
I stand by all of those statements.
Because it's true. He's like, oh, you're here on time. I figured you'd be late, because you like to talk.
I said you were a great presenter. I didn't say you were prompt. We do like to, when on this particular podcast, we do like to talk about people's journey to the faith, and particularly when they come to work for the church. So I'm curious, Cristina, what kind of led you to your life now as a family life director?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think I wanted to, after college, I wanted to study theology. So I went to the JP2 Institute for Marriage and Family Studies, and my goal at that point was to become a marriage and family therapist. And then I kind of, I don't know, I thought about it, and I didn't feel like God was calling me to that, but I still wanted to pursue the degree in non-clinical psychology. So I did do that. So I wanted to fulfill that goal, which really helps because the degree is really helpful in more of a pastoral setting, in a non-clinical setting. And at the time I thought, I'm working in campus ministry, which I also still do at a college. That those pastoral skills are just so needed in that setting. And so I think that thankfully has served well in that arena. But obviously my degree is in marriage and family. So, I wanted to do more in that area. And then, the family life position became available. And so this is a great opportunity to really, to kind of dive into that, and particularly in the area of marriage preparation, which is such a huge thing. It's such a needed thing at this point in time. And the that was what was presented to me in the beginning, in Metuchen, is that we would really love some new work in this area. And so that's kind of how I got there. And thankfully, it's been going very well in spite of, the pandemic and the virtual, and you mentioned before, Donna, the hybrid. So we're working things out. And I think this conference also, we've marketed to the couples who come to us in marriage preparation. And this is another easy way to bring evangelization, to bring catechesis to people before they get married too, because we're focused on families, but obviously at all these stages, and those preparing for marriage are in a very unique position, because oftentimes these conversations are sparked about the faith and like, what does this mean to us? And if we have children, what will that mean? And, all these different things. So I think that this is another area that in the past, I think that we viewed this population as sort of a one and done scenario. They come to us for marriage preparation, and that's nice, but there seem to be gaps in keeping that group engaged, and particularly the newly married. It's very hard. Once people have kids, I think, and they come to the sacraments and they present them for baptism and so forth, it's one of those like touch points, but so we're really trying to keep different age groups and, different populations really engaged in learning more about their faith. So that was roundabout, but that's my background. And I think both of these areas of study, theology and psychology, are coming to good use right now. So,
I've in my line of work as a public relations person, I have to try to explain to people all the time that psychology actually pays a lot into it. Ours is a job where sometimes, you have to walk people to an epiphany, and sometimes you have to offer them a lot of examples. Belief and opinion are very difficult to change in people. And being able to know how a person, not know, but have a fairly good idea about how a person will react to certain things, it's important. And, we live in a world right now where there is this philosophy that either what you believe in is right and what everyone else believes on is wrong, or vice versa. Not speaking in terms of, Catholic truths, but in terms of our daily lives. And, it goes a long way to realizing that there's usually a middle ground somewhere. And if you're coming from things if you're coming from things outside of the Catholic area that everything's an absolute, it's very difficult to sort of lower your guard and understand new things, new ideas, particularly in the Catholic faith, that are simply designed to bring you back closer to God. So I love hearing that a person with a psychology degree is actually heading up marriage prep, because a lot of times with young people in particular, they are kind of like, they dig their heels in, and they might have a hard time understanding certain things about married life. As someone who used to be a young married person, I can absolutely understand that. I'm now an old married person, and my mind is far more open to these things, right, Donna? Has your mind become far more open?
Yes, exactly. After all these years, you bet. But this commitment to it, because I think it's such a critical piece of what we need to do as church. There's so much for us to do as church, but I think young marrieds are a really important part of our Catholic family that we have to find a better way to accompany, into their marriages and into their lives. And, I know a lot of people, that we're a very mobile society now. People move, they come home to get married, and then they go back out to some other parish because of where they live. Maybe it's not even in the same city. It's not even in the same state. So I think it's really hard for us to figure out how to walk with them. So I love this is kind of your space and where God has called you to. Not everyone is sure where God is calling them to. So, and it's a process of discernment. And a lot of people think they don't have a vocation. So in the space where I am now, we're trying to show people that, yes, you have an occupation, but everyone has a vocation, and they cross over. What'd you say to me a couple podcasts ago? She's making a Venn diagram on a podcast, the two circles together, so I think it's really important, the work that you're doing. It's great.
Thank you. And that you touch on a lot of important things, that just the transience of, young married couples nowadays. And I do think that is a blessing of virtual formats because of the fact that you can just reach people, even people who are transient. In fact, one of the things that we do prior to our couples coming for our God's Plan sessions on Zoom is I have them look at 2 videos from the formed.org, the Beloved series on Formed. And so I really, because the goal is not just to be this is a one and done situation. It's really to connect them with all these resources, because oftentimes what we find is that people don't know where to look often, for resources. And so if you could connect them right off the bat, when they're presenting themselves for marriage, something huge like that, and tell them that this exists and the church is here and it's here to walk with you and the church understands you. I think that that's huge. And one of the things that they did teach us over and over again in psychology was, making people feel understood is so crucial. And it doesn't require a degree to do that, because we've been doing that for, hundreds of years prior to everyone having, an advanced degree. And so you just need to have an open and caring heart, and you need to be willing to listen and to hear what they're saying, and also to be able to speak about your faith. So, if you are a young married couple and you're looking for, I hear this all the time, for couples who do really care about their faith, they're always looking for community. And they're always like, well, where is this? I don't see any young couples at my parish. Certainly true at my parish. Very few young couples. But then, of course, that might be the call for you to start something. My husband and I think about this all the time, and he's always, maybe like, okay, why are you starting another thing now? Maybe you should not start something, but this is like more time. But no, because my husband also went to the JP2 Institute, so that's where we met. He has a degree in theology as well, so he has a real heart for ministry. So we end up doing these things, and then we end up starting it. But it needs to start somewhere, and you can pull together your group of friends and your group of young adults and be able to talk about your faith. And, even if it's just informal, because that's really where things start. It's more at the grassroots level. So just to be encouraging others to do that.
That's something I have to, just to sort of jump on that. I've talked about this on the podcast before, but not in quite some time, actually, is that, in my early 20s, prior to getting married, but having met my now wife, we had, I was at the typical age group where you're at that tipping point of either kind of going away from the church or remaining in the church. And I'd gone to a Jesuit university, so I'd had the Catholic background still a part of my life, but I have to say that it was my now wife and her group of friends, I think, that actually did most of the work in keeping me tight. Now, we were fortunate. There were a number of young priests in this group, and then a couple of former seminarians and their girlfriends and their wives or other youth ministers. And I didn't, until I met this group, I didn't realize really that as a cradle Catholic, I didn't realize that, people could be fun and be Catholic at the same time, and interesting and drink and go to great movies and concerts and things like that. It was a wonderful experience. So, it's a good thing to have those things, those parts of your things in your life. And I actually have to give you a lot of credit, Cristina, because I was listening to your podcast episode of the Am I Not Here podcast, the Touchins podcast, where you were talking about a little bit about your own married life, and you referred to yourself as the heathen in your relationship.
Yeah. Great memory again.
Thank you. Well, it really stuck out to me because I'm always very impressed with people who are very self-aware. And you were commenting on the fact that it's your husband who is now. I'm glad that I now know the background of your husband. It's like your husband is the one that he'll read scripture before he goes to bed at night, and things of that nature. And I'm like, see, now that's I think for many couples that might seem rather unnerving, but you presented it in such a way that actually made it seem very, very attainable. To making your spirituality part of your daily life, like with something as simple as reading a little bit of scripture before bed. Is that some of the tips you might give young couples?
Absolutely. There's always, thank you for that, honestly. And my husband, he is, he is Catholic through and through, and anyone who knows him, knows that. But he works in the secular world. He got his theology degree really for fun because he always wanted to.
Wait, I'm sorry. He got his theology degree for fun?
Yes, it was really for his own personal edification. So I should say personal edification.
Well, all right, I respect
that. So yes, and then I ended up, we met and everything, but that's, but he works, he's a software developer. So he's, he works in the secular world. But he always has these ways of drawing people in. So if it's on his, his lunch break, so he's working in Philadelphia, and on his lunch break, he'll go to daily mass, and he has brought coworkers with him. And there's a shrine in Philly for, I think it's St. John Newman, the Newman Shrine, and he's incorrupt. So he brought a few coworkers to the shrine at one point, and they were just fascinated. I think one may have been a non-practicing Catholic. I think one of them was an evangelical Christian or something. But anyway, so he does these things. He's not shy, but it doesn't, but it comes off, I think, in the right way. And certainly, yes, like he, reads scripture, and we don't always get the opportunity to pray the rosary together. I know he does on his own, and I try to, but I haven't been very good at that the past few days. So I'll confess, but it doesn't have to be anything that formal. It can just be, like, Lord, we thank you for this food. Something very simple, just to kind of get your feet wet with prayer as a couple. And I think one of the things that we find oftentimes is that couples are very shy about sharing their spiritual life with one another, which is ironic because it seems like, the spiritual life is so privatized, but it's like, well, wait a minute, this is your spouse and this is the person you're giving everything to. But there's always that idea about spirituality that I just, it is so private. I don't even share it with my spouse sometimes. So I think even just kind of breaking out of that shell and being able to do something really small, and then maybe working up to some of these bigger things. I think that can be so helpful as couples. And, we, before the couples come to our sessions, our God's Plan sessions, after they watch the beloved videos, I ask them to fill out a form and just to kind of, respond to what they learned in the videos. And they always say, oh, we should make more time for prayer together. So it's very helpful feedback, but I think maybe giving people tools and telling them that it's not so scary and, hard to do. It can just be something simple. Even a heathen can do it. So.
Yeah. I'm just happy.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead, Donna. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I love what you're saying, Cristina, around giving young couples practical ways to cultivate their spiritual life as a couple. Because I think sometimes it feels overcomplicated. And I so hear what you're saying around the private nature of our spirituality, that I think there's I could be wrong, but it feels like a very Catholic thing, right? My faith is private. I think it's a cultural thing that we need to get past in some way. So I love the fact that that's the kind of space you're working in, because really couples should be praying together. My husband and I, we pray the rosary when we walk the dog,
Great.
That kind of cultivating that kind of spiritual life, I think, is so important. And I love the fact that your husband is literally living his life as a disciple by bringing people to the St. John Newman Shrine, Mass, because it's very intriguing to people, right? There's an attraction, there should be an attraction to us by the way that we're living, and it's obvious that your husband is doing that, because that's really a way to draw others in. Sins or fallen away Catholics or whoever else is out there. So many people are in need of God. I think there's so much more that we can do. So it's great.
Well, Donna, I mean, you and I have talked about it, and actually this is what I was going to make mention of. You and I have talked in the past that you and I both came from the secular world to diocesan life. And, I loved back in the day being the token Catholic who everybody would come to. I worked for in my last job, I worked for a predominantly Jewish law firm. And every time something would happen in the universe of Catholicism, I would be the person that would be sought out to describe what was going on. So why did Pope Benedict resign? That was my favorite one. It's like, well, okay, here's the story. I don't really know why, but here's the story as to how. And I love that. And there's actually a part of me that kind of misses that, because I did that in every job I ever had. And it was really as close as I ever got to being a proper evangelizer. There are times I feel like I'm even less of an evangelizer now in my current job, even though that's literally my job, is to help communicate the word. But I do it on a less personal level because everybody surrounding me is a Catholic. So there are, like, I'm not that I have my exit strategy figured out, but when I leave the diocese, it will be for a non-Catholic area, just because I kind of miss that. I kind of miss being able to be out and about and explaining to people the faith. So to our listeners, I would encourage you, we often talk, and this is something Donna says ad nauseum. We are all, I know, do you like that? We are all evangelizers, and it's our duty as Catholics to go out and, spread the word. And you don't have to do it by standing on a soapbox on a street corner with a Bible in your hand, or a missal in our case in our hand. You have to do it in your personal interactions by little tiny things. I was so excited when one of my friends, or one of my coworkers rather, decided to encourage her daughter to become confirmed. She had kind of gone through the process, but never kind of hit that last bit. And because she knew me and I presented the Catholic faith in a positive way, she encouraged her daughter to get confirmed. And that was just sort of one more person coming into full communion with the Catholic Church. It's little things like that can be really beneficial. So that's wonderful that your husband is doing that as well. Yeah.
I share your feelings on that too, because I feel that way too. I hear these stories and I'm like, oh man, I wish I had those opportunities. But we all do. I mean, in our families, our extended families, and just the way we live our lives, the fact that, even just among, say, other young families, the fact that, we prioritize going to Mass on Sunday, even though it is hard with a small child. And, I think that says something. That's a way of evangelizing. So, Donna, to your point, yes, we are all evangelizers just by showing people what our priorities are, even without saying very much.
Right.
And to your point about, so I was listening, it was today that I was listening to the podcast from a week or two ago about the conference, and a conversation came up about bringing young children to Mass and how sometimes that can feel kind of off-putting. So that's actually another example of, particularly with Anglo-Catholics like ourselves, where there's a cultural stigma, we might say, to having loud children at Mass. But if you go to a Spanish-speaking Mass, it is a cacophony of sound. There are kids maybe running around. There's kids being loud. There are families sort of being, I remember it was before, right after we got married, I think my wife and I, we were in Gettysburg, we were camping, and I had gotten a little ill that morning, so we couldn't make it to any of the English-speaking Masses, so we had to go to a Spanish-speaking Mass. And it was the strangest, at that time, had been the strangest Mass I'd ever been to, because it was like you were at a family party. There was just movement all over the place. And the priest was completely unfazed. Everybody was completely unfazed. And I'm sitting around, and like, my first reaction was, this is terrible. And by the time I left, I was like, this was wonderful. I was like, because isn't your time at Mass supposed to be family-like? And I'm not suggesting every Mass should be that way, but I do think we should give a little more credit to our Lord and our priests and our neighbors, knowing that maybe it's just our own anxieties that are a little freaking out about our child making a little bit of noise. I think it's actually probably a good thing.
Yeah, and it happens. And I think we don't give our children enough credit, because they learn, they will settle in, and they finally, understand where we are. I know for us, I think I'd mentioned this on the podcast, like not taking our daughter to Mass for a while because of, things being shut down. It was, that was really very hard to get her back into the routine again. But I think you push through it, and maybe that's something to tell people. You push through it, and eventually, there is understanding. And, we got her the little Ascension Press Mass book, and she loves that book. So it's great. You're like, okay. And, for a while, yes, we were the family that was taking her to the back all the time. There's only one young family with a child there, and it's us. So it can't be anyone else's. But at a certain point, there's nowhere to go in the church, but outside. So it's kind of like, all right, well, I'm in the back and like, she's still making noise, but but I have to say, I mean, I'm glad that we did push through, and now now she whispers. Now she just kind of
what a good student.
Yeah.
With really. Like a loud whisper, but she'll be like, I did it. Like, okay. So it's funny.
In the 4 minutes we have left, I just wanted to ask you one more question about related to your other job as a campus minister.
Yes.
It's well known within the diocese that my favorite group to work with is college students. They're that perfect age, and that's just about where we're about to lose them. And I love to put a little pressure on them to stick around. How is that sort of something that you find particular pride in doing a little campus ministry? You do it for Monmouth University?
Yes. I've been doing it for, I guess I'll be going on 7 years now. So yes, this predated my time with the Metuchen diocese. So yeah, I love it. I really do love working with young people, and it keeps you so grounded, because I think that, we're all working in ministry. Like you said, we're working among people who share our Catholic faith, and, it doesn't always feel like it's mission territory. And then when you're with the college students, you realize like, well, this is where we are as a culture. And this is where, our call is as missionaries. So yeah, that was actually something I would always say, that it's such an opportunity among this age group with people that, can be more open-minded. I do think it's very interesting now, because I've even seen a shift from when I started until now, and it isn't even all that long. I think that some of these things are happening even earlier. And I've been reading up about, when people tend to leave the church, and they're saying as young as 11 or 12 is when, and you think like, okay, well, you're still under your parents' roof. Are you, but they might be going to mass, but mentally they've made that decision that this is really not for them. It's not relevant to their lives. So, we definitely have I would say a smaller but mighty group, and that's something that this year, actually over the summer, I gave them summer reading. So yes, I'm that person. I've never done that before, but I decided that this would be a good idea, because I read this great work on evangelization and mission, and how we are just in a culture of real mission territory right now. So I really want to place the emphasis next year with, the student leaders on the fact that like you are evangelizers on your campus, because I don't think that was the case previously. I think that, we always had this idea in the church that people come to us and, we provide it and then they'll come, and that's really not the case nowadays. You really need to be a missionary, whether you're a young person on your campus. You need to really be intentional about spreading the gospel. So yeah, I do love this group, and you forge some great friendships as well. Like I have alum from Monmouth who are now in my young adult group on Zoom. So it's kind of our young married couples group. So it's kind of funny how everything, is like everything comes full circle. Yeah.
It all comes around. You made Donna very happy, because as a head of our missionary discipleship department, she loves hearing when we got to remind people, you got to make outside the church walls too. We got to bring people in, but we got to work out there too. So we have
to work out there. We have to go get the people. They are not coming to us. It is time for us to go get the people.
That's right. So just one last plug for the conference. I do hope people will check it out. If you go to lightingheartsonfire.org, you'll find the conference series. It's at the very top of the website there. You'll see a little link for it. Gives you a breakdown of all the speakers, the background behind it, and then, of course, links to all of the videos that are part of the conference. So I certainly encourage you to go check it out. I watched everything that's up there now. Except for July. I haven't seen July's yet, but I watched all of June's, and I was very happy with it. And we're going to be making sure that we distribute it in the Diocese of Camden and throughout the state of New Jersey. I even saw that Cardinal Tobin was talking about it very recently. So make sure make sure you check it out. And Cristina, thank you so very much for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure having you on. I can tell you already, we're going to want to have you on at another time. So I promise.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
And Donna, thank you for stepping in to be my co-host today at last minute. I very much appreciate that as well.
Here to serve, Mike. Here to serve.
So to all of our listeners, thank you for joining us this week, and we'll be back again next week. Take it easy, everybody.